So let's consider the first book of Gulliver's Travels, The Voyage to Lilliput, in more detail. What is it? We said it is a Juvenalian prose satire, and one thing is for sure, and this is something I should mention right now, is that Gulliver's Travels is not a novel. A novel, I would like to define a novel by that there is a development of character. Okay, in a novel, a character starts off differently from what he is in the end, or she. Okay, there will be a certain development, experiences you make, which shape you, and in the end, you or the character turns out to be different. This is not the case in Gulliver's Travels. Okay, in Gulliver's Travels, Gulliver is a completely different character in book 1, from book 2, from book 3, from 4. Those Gullivers don't have anything to do with one another. He's just a foil for Swift's satire to work. Now, it is a Juvenalian prose satire, and I don't want you to refer to it as a novel, although there are people who do. Okay, a lot of people do refer to it as a novel. No, it's not. They don't get it. Okay, they probably still think that Gulliver's Travels is a children's book, particularly book 1 is anything but a children's book, although there are dwarfs and these things, and children may be fascinated by that, but these are all allegories, okay? Allegories, they stand for something else. This is the problem with films of Gulliver's Travels, okay, which exist, but as soon as you put those little dwarfs and the giant Gulliver and so on celluloid, okay, the allegory goes more or less. Therefore, Gulliver's Travels to be filmed is almost, I think it's impossible. Okay, a Juvenalian prose satire. This is what it is. The first story from the first part of Gulliver's Travels I would like to discuss with you is where Gulliver finds out and is told about the customs in Lilliput. Okay, and once again, I mean, Lilliput stands for, have I said this before? I don't know. Lilliput stands for England, if you like. Okay, so Lilliput and the way the Lilliputians behave and so on, this is an allegory on England. Okay, right. And it's, of course, censuring English politics. The one story he gets told is this one, which the picture you see here, this dancing on the rope, where Gulliver is told that politicians, in order to succeed in politics, have to dance on the rope in front of the emperor. And there you already see the allegory here. Politics is a rope dance, which means it's very dangerous, and you can fall very easily. Just think of that. It's true up to the present day. Yeah? Just one tiny mistake and you're gone. Okay? Well, that is what this story wants to express. Okay. Let's read that. Need my glasses here. Let's read that together. So Gulliver learns about Lilliputian customs. Okay? Part of Gulliver's Travels here. When a great office is vacant, either by death or disgrace, which often happens, 5 or 6 of those candidates petition the emperor to entertain his majesty and the court with a dance on the rope, and whoever jumps the highest without falling succeeds in office. Very often the chief ministers themselves are commanded to show their skill and to convince the emperor that they have not lost their faculty. Flimnap, the treasurer, is allowed to cut a caper on the straight rope at least an inch higher than any other lord in the whole empire. So here you go. Yeah. So even ministers, politicians, they have to dance on the rope in front of the emperor, show their dexterity. Flimnap, the treasurer, which is very much an allegory on the Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole, whom we come to in a second. I mean, he is the one who jumps the highest without falling. Okay, but now, these diversions are often attended with fatal accidents, whereof a great number are on record. I myself have seen 2 or 3 candidates break a limb, but the danger is much greater when the ministers themselves are commanded to show their dexterity, for by contending to excel themselves and their fellows, they strain so far that there is hardly one of them who has not received a fall, and some of them 2 or 3. Okay, so, well, some ministers fall. and probably return after that. And now the sentence here. I was assured that a year or two before my arrival, Flimnap would have infallibly broken his neck if one of the king's cushions that accidentally lay on the ground had not weakened the force of his fall. So there's the story, that this Flimnap, prime minister, fell, and then there was a cushion, the king's cushion, which protected him. Otherwise, he would have died, which means probably would be sent out of office for good. So the general reading would be, all right, politics is a rope dance, ministers fall, and sometimes it's only at the mercy of the emperor to hold on to them even after the fall. This would be a general reading of this episode. But let's try an ad hominem reading. I said that Flimnap is the English Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole. Yes, and in Swift's times it was very well known that Flimnap and Emperor, or King George I, that they shared a prostitute, a mistress. And that the king's cushion, that's the prostitute, the mistress. And this mistress, convinced the king to hold on to Sir Robert Walpole even after his fall. She is the cushion that, in a way, made him survive. That's the story behind it. So here you go. This would be an ad hominem reading, directly identifying Flimnap as Sir Robert Walpole, the king's cushion with the prostitute, the mistress, whatever you want to call her, and the king, of course, with George I. Ad hominem reading. So both readings are all right. You can have a general reading or an ad hominem reading, but here, of course, the ad hominem reading is very obvious. It should be very obvious if you know the story behind it. All right? The next thing is Blefuscu. There is not only one island, Lilliput, there is another island called Blefuscu. And if you look at this as a map, which you glean from Gulliver's Travels, from the edition, and there you see the two islands together, and in the middle there is a channel. There's a channel, and these are the two great empires. Of course, we will see that Blefuscu can be directly identified as France. So Lilliput would be the one great empire, which is England, and Blefuscu, France, and of course, in Swift's times, those two countries were at war constantly. And this is what he talks about in the next episode. Not Swift, but, Gulliver gets told this. Now we are threatened with an invasion from the island of Blefuscu, which is the other great empire of the universe, almost as large and powerful as this of His Majesty. Beside our history of 6,000 moons, make no mention of any other region than the two great empires of Lilliput and Blefuscu, which two mighty powers have, as I was going to tell you, been engaged in a most obstinate war for 36 moons past. It began upon the following occasion. All right, so those two countries, Blefuscu and Lilliput, France and England, are at constant war. Right. And now the occasion of the war. It began upon the following occasion. It is allowed on all hands that the primitive way of breaking eggs before we eat them was upon the larger end. But His present Majesty's grandfather, while he was a boy, going to eat an egg and breaking it according to the ancient practice, happened to cut one of his fingers. Story is, there is an egg, and the people cut the egg on the big end. Egg has a small end and a big end. Then the emperor's grandson, whatsoever, grandfather, cut one of his fingers and injured himself. Then this happened here, whereupon the emperor, his father, published an edict commanding all his subjects, upon great penalties, to break the smaller end of their eggs. The people so resented this law that our histories tell us there have been 6 rebellions raised on that account, wherein one emperor lost his life and another his crown. Okay. These civil commotions were constantly fomented by the monarchs of Blefusco, and when they were quelled, the exiles always fled for refuge to that empire. So what does it say? It says, the emperor commanded all his subjects to turn the egg around and cut it on the smaller end. Most of his subjects, or many of his subjects, resented that, and there were rebellions and so on, and Blefusco, in a way France, supported these rebellions. I mean, this refers to the Reformation, okay? The emperor's great-grandfather and so on, this is Henry VIII, okay? Henry VIII, who commanded his subject to turn Protestant by cutting the egg on the other side. This is the metaphor or the allegory for turning Protestant, for the Reformation. People didn't like that, to turn Catholic, a lot of them, to turn Protestant, and then they were supported by the Catholic Empire on the other side. It's France, and this is actually true, that France supported the Catholics on the other side of the Channel in England. One emperor lost his life. This is, of course, Charles I, who was executed in the Civil War, okay? In 1642, 1649, sorry. Charles is executed, okay. And the other thing is, and one lost his crown. This is James II and the Glorious Revolution, okay. So you can read this again as being, if you want to have a general reading, you would say wars are made for trifles, okay, for nothing whatsoever. Or you could say, that hominem reading, oh no, it refers to exactly that. The Reformation, England being commanded by Henry VIII to turn Protestant. People didn't like that. Many people didn't. Some fled to France to seek exile there. A lot of English did in those days, to flee to the Catholic Empire on the other side. Okay, and then you have it, Charles I, James II, and what have you. Okay, so ad hominem reading or general reading. Well, you can pick and choose. Okay, one last thing, the querelle des anciens et des modernes, and this is one context we need for Gulliver's Travels as well. There was a big discussion in Swift's times. This is what this French phrase means. Who is greater, the ancients under Emperor Augustus and Homer and so on, or us? Okay, and there is one metaphor which was always employed, is that the ancients are giants, okay, those ancients, Horace and Virgil and Catullus and Homer and so on, they are giants and we moderns are nearly dwarfs compared with them. And so, dwarfs and giants, and you can read all of Gulliver's Travels if you like, book 1, as being an allegory on that, because Gulliver, he's the giant, and he's a very nice man in book 1. A humanist, an ancient humanist, okay, of the time of Emperor Augustus, and those little mean moderns, So Swift was very much of the opinion that this is true, that the ancients are giants and we moderns are just merely dwarfs compared with them. And in a way, all of book 1, Gulliver's Travels, may serve as an allegory on that. The giant, benevolent Gulliver, who really is that. He's benevolent, he wants to help everybody, and the lean little dwarfs who just want to kill him, okay, and want to get rid of him and want to exploit him. Yes, this allegory is there, and that would be a reading for the whole of book 1, that Gulliver's Travels allegorizes this querelle entre les anciens et des modernes, des anciens, des modernes. By the way, this picture here sees books fighting with one another, the books of the ancients and the books of the moderns. That's one story by Swift. Here you have an illustration, that an ancient giant, and there is a dwarf standing on his shoulders. This is another reading of that, yes, those ancients were giants, but we as dwarfs stand on the shoulder of giants, therefore we can look further. But this was certainly not Swift's attitude. Okay, certainly not. So, this context is there as well. Okay.